Welcome to the Everything New York Giants podcast with New York Giants fangirl. I'm Adrianna, your host, and I'm very excited because we have a super exciting draft episode tonight. I have CBS Sports and Big Blue Banter's Dan Schneier here. Welcome. Very excited to have you on.
Very excited to be on. Obviously, I've been following your work for a little while. I think you're doing a great thing, and I think you're coming up. And it's great, in my mind, to have more voices in the Giants sphere that are not always, even though it's not a big deal, and I don't think it defines you, but not always male voices. We can have more female voices. There's so many female Giants fans I interact with on a day-to-day basis and in my life. My mom being one of them, a diehard. Like, it's good to have a different voice in here, and I love what you're doing. So I'm happy to do this, and I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. One of my goals has been to try to find all the women Giants fans. I'm like, I know they exist.
They do.
The Giants Women's Club. I'm like, where are all of them? So I'm on a mission to find them. So we'll find more as I go along. Obviously, the draft this week, a lot of talk. The Giants have 6 picks this year. The big one, obviously, is the 6th overall. They have a lot of positions to fill. And I know you've watched a lot of film. So I was thinking maybe we'll kind of go through positions of need for the Giants and maybe what your top picks are. So let's start with wide receiver, because I think a large portion of the Giants fan base feels either one way or the other. They either want Odunze or Nabers at 6, Marvin Harrison Jr. if he magically falls to us, or they want them to trade down for a quarterback. So in your mind, and based on what you've seen on film, do you think that between Odunze or Nabers, one of them is a better scheme fit, better, I don't want to say like personality, but Joe Schoen, all I hear from his mouth is smart, tough, and dependable, and how they really care about the person and how that's going to interact. And I heard what Nabers said about the quarterback situation, and I kind of felt like maybe he could have said something a little bit differently. So I didn't personally love that. But I wanted to hear what you thought. And out of those two guys, do you favor one versus the other?
It's a great question, and it's something I've gone back and forth on like this entire time as far as who I favor. I started off definitely with Nabers over Odunze, but as I've watched more Odunze, it's hard to not like him, and as I listen to more Odunze, it's hard to not like him. So I think your question is really interesting from multiple standpoints. I'm going to start by saying scheme fit, pure football fit. I actually think Malik Nabers is a better fit for the scheme system, what the Giants run. So, for example, what I'm talking about is if you listen back to early Joe Schoen when he's breaking down receivers like Wan'Dale Robinson and Hyatt, all these people he's drafted or invested in, one thing he always stresses is separation. Separation is the key for him. And Odunze is an amazing separator, especially for his size, 6'3". He's not the separator Nabers is. It's not even close. And I don't think anyone would argue with that or find that controversial. And that's not a knock on Odunze. It just shows the type of level separator Nabers can be at the NFL level. Like, we're talking about an elite separator. So schematically, Nabers fits better, but roster wise, depth chart wise, Odunze fits better because the Giants have some Nabers types on their rosters. They're not Nabers, Wan'Dale Robinson and Jalen Hyatt, who's a little bit different, but Wan'Dale Robinson specifically, but they fit that role. The Giants kind of need that big X wide receiver that Odunze is to fit the actual depth chart out. So from that standpoint, he fits better. Now, smart, tough, dependable, the things you talk about, they are important to Joe Schoen. And it's not just because of boilerplate things like let's be smart, tough, dependable. It's because this system is hard to pick up from a mental IQ standpoint. And I'm not saying Nabers can't pick it up fast. I don't know that. That's something I never judge the mental stuff because you can listen to interviews and you get a feel for it. But the only people who really know that are the Giants because they're doing the private meetings and they actually know and they put them up on the board. But with that said, not knowing where either of those guys are at, it is important because this is a hard system to pick up for a wide receiver. We saw this happen with Kadarius Toney. We've seen this happen, and we saw that example and how that played out. Like, you have to know where to be. There's choice routes within this offense, so you got to really know where to be, and you got to be on the same page as the quarterback within this offense as a wide receiver. So I think from that standpoint, projection-wise, maybe I'll say Odunze is the better fit, but I don't know. So I'm just going to leave that to the Giants. The last thing I would say, though, is this team needs, in my mind at least, a big-time leader, alpha wide receiver for this room. Both those guys can be that, but Odunze was the team captain of Washington. And Odunze is the guy who I think can be that lead by example type guy. So it's a really tough debate. Film, I would take Nabers. Fit for the Giants, I might take Odunze. I don't think you can go wrong either way with these two guys. I said this before, and I'll say it again. Going back, I went back 10 draft classes. All 3 of these guys, Harrison, Nabers, and Odunze, would be my top-ranked wide receiver in 7 of the last 10 draft classes.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yep.
And I think that puts the Giants in a really good position. You know, they can't go wrong if any one of them falls to them at 6. Obviously, I think the biggest question is going to be, well, are any of the quarterbacks going to fall to them at 6? Because then, you know, then you're weighing, well, the quarterback versus wide receiver position. And obviously, I think it depends on who the quarterback is. But I want to continue with wide receiver for a second, because let's just say in the off chance they end up getting a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to the next level of wide receivers, you have the Lad McConkeys, the Keon Colemans. If we end up picking wide receiver, let's say at 47,
Mm-hmm.
if any one of those falls to us or someone else, who do you think is going to be the best fit for the Giants? And I also think there's a good chance that neither of those guys make it to them all the way down at 47.
It's certainly possible. It's hard to predict. There's going to be a lot of wide receivers selected in this class. And I think to answer this question, I'm going to go less who might be the best fit for the Giants and just who I think are the best overall players at wide receiver who could be in that 47 range. Because I'm not, once I get to that point, I'm less concerned with fit. I'm concerned with getting the player right, because I've said this before and I'll say it again a million times. The draft is a total crapshoot. If you look at some of these classes, like literally 50% of the first round players don't end up working out well. Once you get past that, you just need to focus on the player, not the position. This is something I try to always stress on our podcast. Like, a lot of fans wanted to go, I want quarterback, then wide receiver. These are our biggest needs. Just do it. No, it doesn't work like that, because you have to make sure you get the player right. And the player for me that stands out above the rest is Ricky Pearsall out of Florida. I love his profile. So you watch Ricky Pearsall out of Florida and you think, maybe this is a guy who, because you've seen his standout catch this past season at Florida was when he went over the middle, up the seam, between two defenders in coverage, and high pointed the ball with his right hand, knowing he might get clobbered and take a hit, and came down with the catch. It was like an Odell Beckham level type catch. And you looked at that and everyone's like, who is this guy? Because he didn't have a lot of production before transferring to Florida. And those are the two biggest knocks on him: the age, he's 24, and the lack of production before transferring to Florida. But I can't speak to those things, because I watched the tape and I'm like, this dude is a first round talent. And from an athletic standpoint, people didn't expect this from him, but his athletic profile is amazing. He tested out at the combine as the 32nd most athletic wide receiver prospect at 3,121 from 1987 to 224. 6'1", 190 with 17 bench press reps, which is underrated. His play strength that he shows to the next level. 10-yard split, 149, elite types of quickness. 20-yard split, 253. 40-yard dash, 441. The vertical speed is there. It's not his calling card, but then you look at the short shuttle and the 3-cone, 405, 684. You see that on the film, his ability to change direction. Those numbers that change your direction, and that short shuttle and 3-cone test your change of direction. Those rank in the range of the Julian Edelmans and the Jackson Smith and Jigba type prospects. Those slot type receivers who can just seamlessly transition in and out of their breaks, creating separation. And what I talked about earlier was Joe Shane stretches separation above all else. So to me, at that pick at 47, he's by far and away my favorite target.
I think, I mean, obviously the whole quarterback thing is going to be really interesting, but something that you mentioned that I want to transition to talking about the quarterbacks, JJ McCarthy specifically, is the lack of production in college. And this is a little bit of my concern with JJ McCarthy. And I watched a couple of Michigan games this year. I didn't watch all of them. I am also a little bit bitter because the few times they took the over on JJ's passing yards, he not once ever hit it. So I'm a little pissed at him for that. But the lack of production that we saw when it comes to passing, right? And I know it's because of Harbaugh's scheme, and I know it's because they had a good run game and blah, 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 and XYZ and all of that kind of thing. What am I missing when it comes to JJ? And I've seen some stats, I've seen some things. He's really good under pressure, even though he maybe hasn't been pressured that much, and he's good over the middle, and he's made some great back shoulder throws and stuff like that. He's got the arm talent. Is there things that people like me who are just like, well, I haven't seen the production, so I don't know the potential that he has, that kind of thing? What are we missing?
I would say some of the positive traits that I liked from his film was he is a very clean quarterback process. And what I mean by that is his foot, from everything from his lower body mechanics to his footwork to his upper body mechanics and the throwing motion, it's all clean. It's not a lot of wasted movement. There's not a long windup, which is really important to me at the NFL level, because you've seen some of those guys who are great at college with long windups. Byron Leftwich is like the best example. It just doesn't work in the NFL. You can't have a windup throw. He doesn't have that. And his mechanics are really good lower half, especially when throwing to his right. They start to get wonky though when throwing to his left. Sometimes he overstrides into throws to his left. And this is also both to the left left and right from a vertical standpoint. I see too much width in his base and too much of a stride length into some of those throws, which is why I think some of the throws are off when you look on the throwing to the left and the right. And that's probably my biggest concern with McCarthy. It's that he's got good velocity from an arm talent standpoint, and he throws the middle intermediate stuff really well from an arm talent standpoint. Anticipation, velocity, fitting tight windows, ball placement, in my opinion. I think he's great under pressure. There's so many examples on his tape of me watching him take a massive hit where he just stands tall and makes the throw and then kind of throws it with anticipation by leading the receiver into space instead of where that receiver is. These are all great things, but the deep stuff, the vertical game, is a big concern for me. There's just too many examples of really poor vertical throws on his film, some that hang up in the air and fall short. The one against, I believe it was either Purdue or Indiana. I want to say Purdue, but it might have been Indiana, where he's got a wide receiver running wide open on the vertical plane, running toward the right pylon. Instead of throwing and leading it out into space into the right pylon, the ball hangs up. The receiver is forced to stop for it. He makes a crazy catch, but the DB catches up by then. And you don't want that. You don't want the receiver to have to slow down for the catch. You want to lead him in space. And the worst part about it was a purely clean pocket. So he just threw it from a clean pocket. So anyone who watches him knows that has to improve, and they're going to have to bank on the coach's ability to improve that and, add a different time. Because right now he's just got the fastball, I think, as a thrower. But other things I like about him is, you talked about some of the stats. One of the best stats is his production on third downs. He was a really great player on third downs, one of the best quarterbacks in the class from an efficient standpoint. Another thing is his ability to create out of structure. I feel like he feels pressure really well in the pocket. And as Giants fans, we know how important that is because we've had quarterbacks who don't do a great job of feeling the pressure. He feels the pressure great. He gets out of it. And then especially when moving to his right, he's one of the best throwers on the run in this class, which is an important trait in today's NFL. So there are things I like about him. And then you just add the intangibles too. Like this guy knocked out every interview at the combine. Every coach who had amazing things to say about him. And that just doesn't, that's not to just say, oh, he's going to be like the hardest worker, the first in and out. That's what Daniel Jones is. That's great. When I'm not talking, I'm talking about that plus. The plus to me is that he knocked out the board stuff. That means when they put them on the board, breaking down plays and understanding concepts and defensive coverage and things like that, he passed with flying colors. You could see that at times on his tape. Now he's still raw. I think as a quarterback, he made such a big jump from 2022 to 2023 when it comes to processing. Like there were so many more examples of him just like not reading an A-gap blitz or a corner blitz on 2022 and 2023. Some slow processing in 2022 where he's staring down the first target. He's moving faster through his reads. And that's great because he's 21 years old. Like he's got room to grow. Right. Like just flash that potential ability to process. And that's something we really never know, processing. And it matters so much in the NFL. You can't really predict it or project it because the college game is so different. And it's a big problem when it comes to why there's so many busts. And so it's so hard to project this position. But those are some of the traits I really like. And then obviously the intangibles, which is he's just been a winner at every level. He was a dominant winner at the first high school, transferred to the next high school, like the prep school, won again the state title. Then he wins the national championship and almost wins it the year before with his 2 years at Michigan. So those are things teams like. They really are.
Yeah. Okay. With all that being said, would you take him at 6 if Odunze, Nabers are on the board?
So where I'm at with this is a great question. I would take one of those two. I would take Nabers or Odunze over JJ McCarthy, me, if you're asking just me. But if the Giants are in that position and they take McCarthy, I'm going to get on board fast. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, because I trust Brian Daboll's ability to evaluate quarterbacks. I trust Joe Shane's ability to evaluate quarterbacks. He's part of the team that found Josh Allen. And that was a tough eval. Josh Allen came out of Wyoming, and he never completed more than 59% of his passes at Wyoming in a really easy conference. And if you watch the tape of Josh Allen, people are like talking about Drake Maye like he's this raw prospect who has all these sprayed and missed throws on tape. I dare you to go back and watch Josh Allen at Wyoming. There are balls being drilled into the ground. There is a lot more of a raw prospect. Now, I don't think Drake Maye has exactly the type of upside that Allen had. No, Allen's 6'5" with a much better arm than almost anyone I've ever seen. He's a bigger and better athlete. But as far as raw goes, like this was a much rawer prospect, and they figured him out. So I think they can really see what you need to be in a quarterback to really succeed at the NFL level. So if they go McCarthy, I'll buy in. But me personally, I am at the point where I don't have a pure conviction on him. And part of this is just a simple fact that like I have a high bar I set for quarterbacks. When I'm drafting a quarterback, top 5, top 6, whatever it may be, I don't necessarily want a guy who could be like a top 15 guy or a good starter in the NFL, because the problem with that is we ran into this problem with Daniel Jones 2 years ago. If you sign that guy to the second contract and you're paying him 20% of your cap, you basically can't win unless you draft the perfect roster and you just keep drafting hits after hits. If I'm drafting a guy this high, I want the upside. He may not be there yet, but I want the upside to be an elite top 5 or top 10 quarterback in the NFL. And I'm just not sure I have that conviction on McCarthy. So for me, I would probably go with one of the receivers.
The way I see it too with the quarterbacks, and I know that this is such a quarterback heavy class and everyone's talking about how great all these quarterbacks is, but it's interesting because I've listened to a bunch of different Giants podcasts over, forever at this point, but specifically over the last couple of weeks, it's been, with guys like Dave Syvertson and Rick Sarantella. And when I hear them talk about the quarterbacks, then, I hear them talk about them differently. And I think Rick specifically said, like, to me, Caleb is the guy and everyone else outside of that is good, not great. And like you said, it's all risky. You don't really know how it's going to work out.
Yeah.
And the other thing is they're paying Daniel Jones and they have Drew Lock. So I feel like realistically, no matter who they draft as the quarterback, they're not getting playing time this year unless Tommy DeVito is on the practice squad and they end up being the quarterback number 3 and Jones and Lock get hurt, like a Tommy DeVito situation again, which, knock on wood, we never see that again with the Giants. But I just feel like this quarterback is not going to step in and play week 1. And they're realistically not going to play until next year after Dable and Tierney have had the time to develop him and help him improve and learn and et cetera, et cetera. So part of me feels like as much as for me, it's Jaden Daniels. I love him. If he fell to us at 6 or we managed to trade up, I would be thrilled. But I also feel like, well, if they're not going to play for a whole year, then is it the worst thing if we don't get a quarterback until next year, or we get someone in round 3, round 4, see if they're better than Tommy DeVito, let them, figure it out this year and then see what happens next year. One thing that I liked that Rick said is, I forget who it was who he was talking about, but there's a specific owner and coach who drafts a quarterback every single year and just feels like no matter what, you draft a quarterback in any round, you develop them, see how it goes, and either it works out and you can eventually trade them, or they can be your starter, or they can be a backup, whatever, or it doesn't work out. But I like that thought process. And that kind of got me thinking, well, like, would it be the worst thing if they don't get a quarterback this year? I would be shocked if they don't. But do you think that that is a possibility at all?
I think it's definitely a possibility as far as that goes. Like if the Giants, I think it comes down strictly to the New England Patriots, in my opinion of what's going to happen. I think it's going to be Caleb at 1, Jaden Daniels at 2, and then do the Patriots, in my opinion, are definitely not trading. This is my personal opinion. They're taking a quarterback there. And it's just a matter of the guy they take between Maye and McCarthy. If that guy is the guy the Giants really wanted, I don't think the Giants are getting a quarterback this year. Or they might take a late guy, like you said, in day 2 or 3. If that guy's not the guy, I think the Giants are trading up to 4 and getting that guy. That's my personal take on what's going to happen. As far as his point and your thought process on that, I go back and forth in this. At times I felt that way. Like earlier in the offseason, I was like, all right, well, if we don't get a quarterback in round 1, I at least want one on day 2 or 3. So, because I just saw what Brian Dable did with Tommy DeVito, and it was phenomenal work with what he is. But then I go back to my other thought on this, which is, do I even really want that? Because I said again, like, I want elite upside at quarterback. I don't really care about getting like a pretty good guy that Dable can turn into, or no, an average guy that Dable can turn into the best he can be, because that still is not the ceiling I'm striving for. And in that regard, the history of drafting quarterbacks outside the top of a class is not very strong. You're going to have some hits occasionally, but the actual data shows that you rarely hit. It's almost always a wasted pick. So you look at the history, and that gives me pause. And the last thing about it was, what Rick's saying is interesting, and it's great if it was a reality. But to me, the reality is that the NFL, and I've heard a lot of people discuss this, is not actually a developmental league. There's nothing in place to develop these guys. These guys can't get reps. There's no way for this quarterback to get reps. And this is a big problem with offensive linemen, why there's such a shortage of good offensive line play in the NFL. Because again, it's not a developmental league. You draft these raw offensive line prospects. Where are they going to develop? Unless they're playing down to every snap, they're not developing. You don't really get playing the practice squad. That's not real reps. And there's no like G League, like the NBA. You see a lot of these guys break out from the G League into the NBA. There's like a secondary leagues in the NFL, but they're not really developmental leagues. They haven't produced a lot of talent. It's kind of just retreads, guys. No offense, like Wayne Gallman, who's playing right now, is, a player who could be in the NFL, could not be, but like is good for that kind of league, but not a developmental guy. So that's the biggest problem I have with that plan. It's just that this league isn't really set up for that.
Yeah. So if they, let's say, round 1, they go wide receiver. Round 2, they go best player available, whether it's corner, safety, offensive line, whatever. In round 3, if that area, the best player available is looking like a Joe Milton, a Spencer Rattler, out of those guys, would you take either one of them? And I've heard you talk a little bit about Spencer Rattler, and I went to University of South Carolina, so I've probably watched more South Carolina games than other games when it comes to college. And I like him personally, but I have not watched enough film or anything on him. But I, like you said, I feel like I trust Dable. What we saw he did with Cutlets, whether, you know, it's Jaden Daniels or it's Spencer Rattler or Sam Hartman, you know, I feel like I believe that he can make them the best that he can be. He's not going to turn any one of them into Josh Allen, and I don't expect that, but I expect them, you know, to maybe be better than what they are right now.
Yeah. As far as that goes, and that's a good point. I think so it's interesting. The Giants brought a lot of these guys in for pre-draft visits. Bo Nix, Spencer Rattler. They didn't bring in Joe Milton, who I thought they'd have interest in based on the fact that, one, they have the pipeline through Tennessee. Josh Heupel, their coach there. They already took Jalen Hyatt. They've obviously seen that team. They were connected to Hendon Hooker, the quarterback, last year. And then when I watched Joe Milton, I'm expecting to see this, like, because I recently watched a lot of Jalen Wright, who's a running back for Tennessee. So I got to see more Milton. And that's really my first actual tape I've watched of Milton. I didn't have time to watch all of these guys in the draft. No one does. Like, literally, no, it's not physically possible. But I got to watch some Milton, and I was like surprised he's not as raw as people say he is, but he is still raw. And there's still concerns there. And they haven't really been linked to him. So he would be the guy who interests me because he has what I'm looking for, which is, I always say these are my combination for if I'm going to have a conviction on a quarterback, I need him to have the frame. I need him to have the arm talent. I need him to have the athleticism. Those are my three things I'm looking for. Now I want the other things too. And I want the ability to process. I want the ability to throw those tight windows and have that aggressive nature and not be scared to make those throws. But I really need, for elite, I need to have arm talent, especially, and frame, because if you look across the NFL at all the elite quarterbacks we have, and we don't have many, it's a bad quarterback league right now. Every single one of them has elite arm talent. There's no exceptions. People have said, what about Joe Burrow? And I say, you don't know what arm talent means if you don't think he has elite arm talent, because his ability to anticipate open windows, throw into space, and throw with good ball placement makes that arm elite, even if it's not the strongest arm. That's not what arm talent is. It's not about arm strength. So I look at Joe Milton, and I think maybe Brian Dable can fix that. And he has the frame, he has the athleticism, he has the arm strength. Could he get the arm talent? I don't know. That's up to Dable, because Josh Allen coming out, arm talent was questionable. He needed to fix his mechanics. The arm strength was through the roof, but he was drilling passes into the ground and missing open guys, just like we see from like a player like Drake Maye and Joe Milton at times. So Milton would be interesting to me, but I like Spencer Rattler. I'll tell you why, because I feel like he was dealt the Daniel Jones hand of 2023 when it comes to college football. He was pressured 40% of the times, dropbacks. He had a different offensive line combination in 10 out of his 12 games last year, which is insane. Like, this is what Daniel Jones was dealt. And, you know, Daniel Jones didn't produce with it. Spencer Rattler produced with this situation. He wasn't the most productive player in college football. He was pretty damn productive considering the situation. And he actually has like the stuff I look for from an arm talent standpoint. My biggest concerns with Rattler from a projection standpoint are, one, the frame. I don't think he has an NFL frame. And two, the athleticism. I think he's decent sometimes move, but I've seen too many reps of him not able to escape sacks in the pocket and just not able to get out when he needs to get out of those pockets at the college level. To me, to project to the NFL level, to say, well, if he's not getting out of those at the college level, he's definitely not getting out of those at the NFL level.
Right. Is there anyone out of those quarterbacks, or is there anyone else that maybe I'm missing that you think is probably like the best of the second tier, or I guess third tier even?
Yeah, I'm again, like, I'm very high bar for quarterbacks, so I'm not really always that interested in the third tier or even the second tier. For example, like even in this class, there's only two quarterbacks who I have a conviction on. There's only two quarterbacks in the entire. It's supposed to be a great quarterback class, and I wouldn't mind McCarthy because I'm intrigued somewhat by him. But there's only two quarterbacks I have a conviction on that have what I believe are, again, the arm talent projection, the frame, and the athleticism projection to be, and the anticipation, like the ability to throw those tight windows, especially in the middle of the field. In this class. So for me, second and third tier, it would be a no.
Okay. So who are your top two quarterbacks? And if you are Joe Schoen, are you going down to get either one of them? If the other teams are willing to trade with us, obviously, like we already talked about, you know, I also kind of agree with you. I'm like, if I'm the Patriots and I need the quarterback, why am I trading with the Giants when I can get whoever I want right there pretty much?
Right. Yeah, and the Patriots just they've I mean, there's some smoke there, but I just think they're in this position. It's hard to get in this position for a quarterback. You don't really give it up and just say like maybe next year. And it's like, what happens next year when you're now picking 6 or 7, or you know, this quarterback class isn't that good. Now you're waiting another year, and then you're really in a bad spot. So The guys for me are one that the Giants have no chance of getting, though. I heard they were heavily linked to him all the way back to like November when there was a possibility they thought they'd get him in talking trade. And I'm going to say this, but I'm probably not supposed to, but talking trade, potentially looking to trade for him when they thought it was a possibility. He's in my opinion, from what I've heard, by far their number one player on the board. It's no surprise it's Caleb Williams. He will go number one overall to the Bears. Caleb Williams, to me, is one of the best quarterback prospects that I've evaluated since I started doing this. I always am asked the question, Caleb or Trevor. I think Trevor's still a better prospect because he had the better frame and he was more polished, but I think Caleb has a better ceiling than Trevor Lawrence, and I think Caleb Williams is a phenomenal prospect, one of the best I've ever evaluated. So him, I have the conviction on. The other one I have the conviction on is Drake Maye out of North Carolina. I would be willing to trade up for Drake Maye. He's the only he's the only quarterback not named Caleb who we have no chance at that I'd be willing to trade up for. Drake Maye has all the things I look for from a projection standpoint. He's got the frame, 6'4.5". He's got the size, 230. He's got the athleticism. He ran for 700 yards and 7 touchdowns his freshman year at North Carolina. He's got the arm talent. You watch him throw these deep balls. They're beautiful. They have even just the way he's able to layer throws in the intermediate middle of the field. It's phenomenal. And the anticipation throws he makes, the second window throws he makes in that intermediate middle, no one in the class does it except for him and Caleb. Like Jaden Daniels, I like him as a prospect, but he doesn't use the middle of the field. It's a problem. Michael Penix, like him as a prospect somewhat, doesn't use the middle of the field. And these are the areas of the field that Justin Fields didn't use. And it's kind of stymied his ability at the NFL level to play the quarterback position. It's really important because at the college level, you can throw the outside like Michael Penix and Jaden Daniels do all day, hitting slot verts to Malik Nabers or Odunze. And it's awesome and it's great. And there's a lot of space to work with on the outside because of the way the college rules are set up with the hash marks. But when you get to the NFL level, that space is gone, not only because of the rule changes, but also because the players are so much faster at the secondary level. You're not playing against guys who aren't going to make practice squads. You're playing against the best of the best at each position, and the speed of the game condenses windows. So what's really only open is that intermediate middle of the field for the most part. That's where the real great quarterbacks, the Burrows, they cook in that area. And I think Maye has the ability to cook in that area. So he's got all the traits I want, in addition to just some really good leadership and just like off-field stuff that I like about him. And he was dominant in 2022. He regressed in 2023. Well, guess what? He had 180 targets go by the wayside. He didn't really have a single good receiver. He has Devontae Walker, who is a hands catcher who makes plenty of bad plays on film and super raw prospect, mostly just like a boomer bust type guy. He had horrible offensive line situation last year, horrible defense, and they changed coordinators, and they went away from a coordinator that worked for him, a great coordinator, Phil Longo, and to a guy from Auburn who I personally didn't think ran a good system from watching the tape from 2022 to 2023. Not to knock the guy, I don't know him. I just didn't think it fit Maye's skill set best. So I think there's some, to me, like I see this class as, I know there's been a lot of knocks on Maye, and it's fair. Like you watch him play and he misses throws that you're like, how did he miss that? And you could see the wonky footwork all over his film and the mechanics, and you're like, wow, this is ugly looking. But then I just think back and I'm like, you know who else was like that? Josh Allen. He also had wonky footwork and mechanics, and Dable fixed that. And Dable was able to get the most out of this crazy athlete and arm talent type prospect. So for me, that's the guy I have the conviction on. I personally don't find the Giants are going to be in that many situations where they're going to have a chance to get a guy who's 6'4.5", 230 with amazing arm talent and athleticism. Doesn't come around every draft class. It didn't come around the Kenny Pickett draft class. It was there with CJ Stroud last year, but I didn't see it, and that's on me. And I just, to be honest, I didn't really watch tape of any quarterbacks last draft because the Giants had just re-signed Jones, so there was no point, at least for what I do. So I just don't know when the Giants are going to have an opportunity for this type of prospect again. So I'm willing to take the gamble and the risk that Brian Dable can mold this guy into who he needs to be.
Yeah. I really feel like between Dable and Tierney, like what I've seen from them, I agree with you. Like, I feel like he's the guy. And, I get these questions like, with Belichick being out there, and now it's like, well, if Dable loses 6 games this year, is he automatically fired in Belichick? And I'm just like, it's not that simple. Like, I don't think you can just put a win-loss on it, because if they have a scenario with what happened last year with people get injured and it's not really a developmental league, like I expect a lot of the offensive linemen to take a step forward, but I don't expect Joshua Ezeudu to all of a sudden become a top 10 guard in the league from what he's been. So with that being said, I want to talk about offensive line a little bit. Do you see any scenario where the Giants go offensive line at 6?
Not at 6, no.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I would be surprised by that. And I think for me, the biggest reason why is partially because of what happened with Evan Neal. And also we need a wide receiver, and it's going to be the best player available at that point. And I just don't see them picking a left tackle that they're going to attempt to move to right tackle again, just because we have a new offensive line coach. That doesn't make any sense to me to do.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. It's the exact same scenario you already went through, and it didn't work out great. Also, in addition to that, I just think that, I just can't get out of my head that, like, it's crazy to me. What I saw from Evan Neal at Alabama is just nothing close to what I've seen so far on his tape bet with the Giants. And I just know there's a player in there. It's like there's never been you look at, like, people think back, like Eric Flowers. Well, guess what? Eric Flowers wasn't that good on film in Miami. He was a projection-based pick. He had so many more warts. Like, he had so much more bad tape than Evan Neal had. Evan Neal had a lot of good tape. And the things that Evan Neal struggled with the NFL level, to me, like, and I talked about this with Cy, like, we both kind of agree. A lot of it is just confidence. Confidence plays a huge role in sports in all different positions. I always talk about this. I just got into golf last summer, and now I'm addicted to the sport. And, like, the difference.
The same way.
Oh, you're addicted to it. It's
yeah, I started last year, and I'm like, I cannot wait to get out there.
Every time you can play. And for me, like, I always revert this back to when I'm stepping up to the driver, to the tee, and I'm confident with my driver and it's been going well, I'm just smoothly hitting that driver, easy swing, and it's working every time. Then days where I'm not confident, I'll top a driver or I'll do something weird with the driver. Same thing for the putting. When I'm confident in the putting, it's going okay and pretty good. Not that good. I'm not a great putter. It's my worst part of my game. But when
it's so hard.
It's so hard. And when I'm not confident with the putter, it's as bad as it gets. So confidence is a big factor here. And I'm hoping that Carmen Brasil can find a way to engage Neal in a way and teach him in a way that's going to rebuild his confidence. So I think part of it for me is the Giants don't really want to draft over Evan Neal just yet.
Yeah. What do you think about moving him to either left guard or right guard? Because I'm fairly certain that at Alabama, and correct me if I'm wrong here, he played left guard, right guard, and then left tackle. He did a year of each. The way I see it is you have Elamuner now as your backup or starting right tackle. Why not move Evan Neal to guard now? Let him have the entire offseason, spring, summer, training camp, preseason to get back and get comfortable in the guard position versus letting him start at tackle. And if he has a bad 4 or 5 weeks, then you're going to throw him into guard and expect him all of a sudden to pick it up like this. And like you said with the confidence thing, like for him to go into left tackle or right tackle and assuming that he has a bad couple weeks, because there is, from what we've seen, there is a good chance that we could see that all over again. And then, then you worry his confidence is low. Well, let's move him to a position and see how he does there, trying to, get back into it after having a potential tough few weeks and games.
It's a great point by you. And it's a great question. And it's interesting because I can see both sides of it. I can see your side. Your side's great because it's like, look, we've already seen this guy might bust at the NFL level at the tackle position. And part of why he's been bad at tackle is his ability to, which I never thought this would be an issue for him, because it's not an issue for like DeJuan Jones and some of these other guys that have been just like these big, long athletes, but to win up the arc, guys beat him around with speed a lot of the time. To me, though, a lot of that is just like him getting out of his stance quick enough. And just kind of, again, the confidence thing. So the upside to what you're saying is, I still think the safest route, I would say your strategy there is the safest route, because then you can have Illuminor cross-trained at right tackle. You have Neal at right guard. And again, some of the things that have bothered him at tackle won't be that big of a problem at guard because you're not on an island, right? And you could have two guys to your left and your right who can help you out, and you can kind of just use your body to protect in the inside. But the other side of me is like that caps the upside of the team for a multitude of reasons. One, I think the Giants are a better team if Evan Neal is what he can be at right tackle, if he can evolve to what he can be. I don't know if he can, but if he can, I think they're a better team with him at right tackle and Illuminor at right guard. This is not a knock on Illuminor. I just think he's a solid right tackle, but he's not what Neal can be. The second part of that for me is if you do that and you tell, and that's the move you make. It goes back to what we were just discussing. Confidence-wise, I can't think of a worse way to kill this guy's confidence, Evan Neal, than being like, you're done at tackle, you're moving to guard, which he wants to be a tackle. He believes he can be a tackle. He said as much. And I just think that might kill his confidence, even to that point where, like, he's not even a good guard. So now you may have a better option at right tackle, but you may have no option at guard in this scenario. And your scenario is valid, too, because you may have no option at right tackle in that scenario as well. So it's a tough spot.
I know. So for some later rounds, when it comes to best player available, like Joe Shane said too, this team has a lot of holes.
Yep.
I mean, obviously would like them to get a quarterback, but I think there are some other positions across the board that I would like to see later. And like you, I would go best player available because they have a lot of holes. When it comes to running backs, I know Trey Benson out of Florida State has been hyped up, of course, Blake Corum. But then Audric Estime is also becoming very popular. A lot of fans love him. I've seen some tape on him and liked what I've seen as well. Do you think that that will be an option for the Giants, and maybe probably round 3 or 4 would be my guess? I don't think, from what I've seen, it sounds like running backs are probably not going to get picked until round 3, probably the earliest.
I have 3 guys I love on day 3, and I think they all will go on day 3, not even round 3, but you can Giants get them right at the top of their day 3 at round 4. And the first one is a guy who both Nick and I has as a my guy. We haven't released that show yet, but it'll be coming out soon. And our my guy was Audric Estime. We love his tape.
Okay.
And simple. Listen, when it comes to him, I think the fact that he ran that 4.7 140 is the best thing that could have happened to whoever team drafts him, because it's going to drop him a full round, maybe 2. And guess what? In the NFL, having home run speed at the running back position is the most overrated thing in the world. There are so few chances for you to break long runs. Saquon Barkley has 1 run of 40+ yards over the last 2 years. It's just not available a lot. What I want is the doubles. Give me a running back who can hit doubles. And last season, Audric Estime had 22 carries of 15+ yards. They're your doubles right there.
Wow.
That's what I want. He also had the 7th most yards after contact. He is a big but nimble back. And just someone said, like, he can bring back like the Brandon Jacobs to this offense. He's not quite that. No one will ever be. I look back at B-Jack. He was 6'5", 247, and ran a 4.5, which is just absolutely bonkers. This guy is not that, but he is a really physical back, and he's nimble, and he can get in and out of the tackles. And also he has surprising breakaway speed. Like, for a guy who's supposedly ran a 4.71, I think it might have just been a bad day because he ran a 4.58 at Notre Dame's pro day, though again, pro day timing is what it is. But you watch him break away from defenders on tape, and you're like, wait a second, this is supposedly the slow running back, and he's running like a 60-yard run for a touchdown and breaking away in space. The one knock I have on Estime is that he runs high, and I'm more of I like the running backs who are a little bit shorter with a low center of gravity, and they run with low pad level because I think it allows more yards after contact, but it hasn't affected him yet. Again, 7th most yards after contact of all running backs in college football last year. So I love Audric Estime. Do you want me to get into the other 2?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so another guy I love, converted wide receiver to running back. He played wide receiver at Iowa his entire college career. And you know, from anyone who watches college football, you have no chance to produce as a wide receiver at Iowa. They don't throw the football. Then he came to Purdue, and they converted him to running back. And now all of a sudden, he's an NFL prospect I'm really excited about. And it's Tyrone Tracy, the running back out of Purdue. He had the 5th best forced missed tackle rate last year, the 7th most yards after contact per attempt. He was 5'11", 208, ran a 4.49 with a 40-inch vertical and a 10'4" broad. He reminds me so much of, before he got injured in the NFL, David Johnson, the running back who used to play for the Cardinals before his injury, converted wide receiver as well, can run all those routes. I just feel like the Giants need this kind of weapon in their offense, a running back who's a really good route runner and a receiving option out of the backfield for whoever is the next quarterback, whether it be Jones again or whoever that may be. I just think this is the type of weapon that is so important for the offense, especially after signing somebody like Devin Singletary. And then one final back that I'll throw out here, again, in the mold, not a similar prospect from a size and athleticism standpoint, but again, a receiving type back, Will Shipley out of Clemson. You might be familiar with him as a South Carolina fan. Just think this dude, his jump cuts in space, the way he runs those arrow routes. He has had 40 targets in each of his last 2 seasons. They look for him in the passing game for good reason, because he's a great route runner. And he was a great athlete too. I didn't expect it, but he ran a 4.44, 1.55, 10-yard split. He's got quickness, he's got speed, he's got burst, and he can jump. Vertical jump 38.5, broad jump 10.2, shows explosiveness and leaping ability. So those are my 3 favorite backs and my 3 favorite values for the Giants on day 3.
I love to hear all of that, because some of my biggest complaints with Saquon is obviously the hands. I think we can all agree on that. That Rams game, oh my God.
Oh no.
Oh, that. And then, you know, I watched a lot of San Francisco games, and you just see Christian McCaffrey. It takes multiple guys to get him down every single time. And, you know, when, you know, fans were saying, pay Saquon whatever he want, I just was not on board with that, because the same thing, the yards after tackle, like I just felt like that was not his strong suit. Especially in the last few years. And between that and the hands, like, that is what I want from a receiver. And if you can get a cheap one on day 3, one of these guys that's going to have the opportunity to hopefully have an offensive line that's a little bit better at run blocking and be able to be used in the passing game or used as more of a dual threat, is what this offense desperately needs.
And that's a really astute observation by you, because if you really look at Saquon Barkley pre-ACL versus ACL, MCL, whatever it was, versus the Bears in post, he's a completely different player in yards after contact and his tackle breaking ability. And the numbers back it up. His yards after contact per attempt took a sharp decline after the injury. Unfortunately for him, he's just not that same player he was pre-injury.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, let's talk about defense for a second, because I saw on your tweets. Okay, so for those of you guys who didn't see this, Dan has a draft wish list for different tiers. And one thing that he mentioned when it comes to the trade down scenarios was you didn't love any of the defensive prospects at 11. So my question for you there was, is that going on the assumption that someone like Dallas Turner is going to be off the board? And I believe that there's another really good edge who was ranked top 10, and I don't remember who it is, because I think Cooper DeJean is projected as a later round 1 pick. So were either of those guys, is that what you were getting at with those?
Actually, there's 3 edges who were discussed that you mentioned it, Latu, and then obviously Jared Verse, and then Peyton Turner. I wouldn't take any of them at 11.
Okay.
I think and Cooper DeJean is like the only guy I wouldn't take him at 11, but it's like, if I'm looking for a first round defender, like I need someone who's going to be a playmaker in my defense. I'm not like sold on any of these guys as playmakers. So the only defensive prospects I would consider would be the 2 corners. That's Terrion Arnold out of Bama, and then obviously I'm blanking his name, the kid out of Toledo. I don't know why I'm blanking on his name, but the corner out of Toledo, for some reason I'm having a brain fart about right now. And I'm not as super high on them as other people are, but both of those players I think have enough in their profile that I'd be okay with them at 11 if that's the direction the Giants wanted to go. But to me, it's not the direction I would go. If I trade back to 11, I'm looking at a few different players, but they'd be wide receivers. They'd be Brock Bowers, the tight end out of Georgia, and they would be offensive linemen. At that point, that's when I'm willing to go offensive lineman.
And out of the wide receivers, who would you go for at that point? Would you go for someone like a Keon Coleman? Do you think he's projected to go around that spot?
I wouldn't go for Keon Coleman. I think he's more of like a 2nd round type pick. I just have some questions about his separation at the NFL level in that part of his profile. The guy who Nick and I like a little bit more the consensus, AD Mitchell out of Texas. Just insane traits-based projection. Now, the problem with AD Mitchell is there's been some interesting stuff. Like so first of all, if you watch his tape, which we do a lot of, he's the only receiver you're going to watch in the class that literally is taking off a lot of plays. If the play doesn't come to his side, he's just kind of lollygagging out there. And they asked him about that combine. He's like, look, it's part of what I do. I tempo my, I don't want to waste all my energy on these drives or something like that, which is interesting answer. He also had the report come out recently that has diabetes and he doesn't do a good job of dealing with it. And it's led to some and these are all reports that you don't know if they're substantial or not. But as far as what the film shows, projection wise, he's by far and away, in my opinion, the best chance to be an elite receiver outside of the big 3. And I don't really think it's close. He's 6'2", 4.39 speed. And the difference between him and Brian Thomas, who a lot of people like as their wide receiver 4, is AD Mitchell has the ability to win over the middle with his route running. He can break down in his routes. He has the toughness and physical hands catcher at the catch point. Brian Thomas, I should say, lets a lot of the balls he's more of a body catcher than hands catcher. And I have the routes he ran to me were more slants, vertical, stuff like that LSU ran. So AD Mitchell might be the guy for me. I wouldn't be opposed to a Ricky Pearsall or trading down. Brock Bowers would be the weapon I want the most by far at 11 if he's available. I don't care that he plays tight end. Just think of him as a wide receiver. And Brian Dable's already proven with Darren Waller he can make that work within his offense. So that's my poon there. But for me, probably it comes down to Bowers or Graham Barton, the offensive lineman out of Duke, who I just absolutely love. And he could be, he played left tackle the last 3 years. I don't think he has the arm length to play left tackle in the NFL, but I think he could convert inside and be Elijah Vera Tucker if he's at his floor, and ceiling could be like Zach Martin level. I really do believe that. He's not the same type of prospect as Martin. Martin was a little better play strength, but Barton out of Duke, he can move at incredible level. He will be a weapon in your screen game and your run game when it comes to getting to the second level and sealing off those blocks. So I just think, and his pass protection is great, by the way, and all his off the field stuff is phenomenal as well. Was the best leader on that Duke team. So he would be my target, him or Bowers, if they traded back to 11.
Okay. I love Bowers too. And I think regardless of what happens with Waller, we need another tight end. I don't really feel great about Lawrence Cager being the other option there. Are there other tight ends in this class that you have studied that you think might be good in later rounds?
Yes. 2 guys I like on either round 3, maybe round 4 for both of them. I'm not really sure where they're going to go. And the thing is, like, NFL lately has been really taking big risks on tight ends. Last year, the Jaguars took Brenton Strange in round 2, which he was projected as a definite day 3, round 5 type of guy. So it might just be a situation where other people love these 2 guys, and you got to take them early if you want them. But the first is Ben Sinnott out of Kansas State. He's just a phenomenal player to watch on tape. He reminds me of watching Sam Laporta, and he had almost the exact same athletic testing as Laporta. Such a great mover after the catch, and just think the ability is still a little raw there as a blocker, and his size is not the prototypical wide tight end, but you can use him as a move tight end and be a weapon in your offense, and that's out of Kansas State, Ben Sinnott. The other one is Theo Johnson out of Penn State. Obviously, you may have seen, like, he had a 10.0 relative athletic score, one of the best athletes in the history of the combine, and that's all good and well. Like, he's 6'6", 260. He has the prototypical tight end frame, really like a Kevin Boss type frame. Think of that type of prospect. And then crazy jumps, crazy 40-yard dash, all that, literally agility, jumps, everything was perfect athlete. But you watch the tape and you're like, wait a second, this guy's actually pretty not a bad receiver. Like, I watched him run a route over the middle of the field against Iowa where he runs a quick curl, and his ability to kind of get into that break and sink his hips for somebody who's 6'6", 260, unheard of. And then he's a hands catch away from his frame because he had a lot of off-target throws. He had I believe the 4th highest off-target percentage throws among all tight ends. And obviously he dealt with Drew Aller at quarterback, who is not, he's a great prospect, 5-star, but was really bad on tape last year, Drew Aller. I mean, he had one game against Ohio State. He completed 41% of his passes. So you see a lot of off target. They didn't really use him as a weapon. I just think the projection for Theo Johnson could be through the roof, but both of those guys are developmental guys. Like, I wouldn't be sure they're going to impact for the team right away in season 1.
Okay. Okay. 3 more questions. I will make them quick. The first 2, what do you think is going to happen with Darius Slayton and with Darren Waller? I think Waller's not coming back, but I am personally surprised that Joe Schoen has not told him to get his shit together and, like, give him a deadline. Like, I am very surprised by that. He seems like someone who takes no bullshit, and I just cannot believe that it's being dragged out as long as it is.
Yeah. So I guess we'll start with the Waller front. What do I think is going to happen there? I'll say this is a tough one for me. Like, I honestly, I have no guess there because it's such a personal thing. Like, it just kind of depends on how his body feels and how he feels about his body. And I think it comes down to that. And I think that's kind of why Joe Schoen's giving him this leash, because he's like, look, you won't know where you're at physically until we get closer to camp. And this is at this point not going to impact our draft concerns, because like I feel like they've made moves. They signed Jack Stahl, they signed Manhurts, 2 guys who can play the position if they need to. And on Big Banter, we're big fans of Daniel Bellinger. We think his tape is much better than the perception of who he is as a player. So we think he could step right in. So I don't think it'll affect their draft plans. I'm just going to go open-ended on that. If I had to guess, I would say that he plays this year if I had to guess, because there's money there's still money on the line for these guys. They're still, human beings who could make 11 million or whatever it might be. And that's a lot of money to your family. And he just got married and things like that. So that's my guess there. Slayton, to me, I'm staunch on this one. I think that Slayton has absolutely no leverage whatsoever. I don't think there's much of a trade market for him. And I don't think he can hold out or afford to hold out at this stage of his career. So if I'm Giants, I'm playing hardball with Darius Slayton. Show up when you want to show up. You want to miss training camp, fine. You already know the system. I'm not worried about that. But it could also impact your playing time, which is going to impact your career. So you don't really want to miss training camp. You need to get these reps, especially if it's a new quarterback. So, I mean, from that standpoint, I think the Giants got to play hardball there.
Yeah, I think he knows the writing's on the wall, which I guess I don't really blame him for trying. Now's the year, but also best of luck with that, knowing what's coming. Okay, so with that being said, what is your draft prediction? What do you think they're doing at 6?
Okay. It's so dependent on what the Patriots do, but my guess is Patriots listen to Robert Kraft in the end, and they take JJ McCarthy at 3. And so I think the Giants will trade up to 4th overall with the Cardinals and select Drake Maye. That's my prediction.
Okay. I like it. I would be on board with that. I personally think they're going wide receiver. I am torn between thinking that Joe saying, we're not a player away is obviously, we know that's true, but I also wonder if he said that just to be like, we're not going to trade up for a quarterback because we need all these things. So I don't know. It's going to be very interesting.
So unpredictable. It just made it a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yes. And I think that we're honestly not going to know until that night at 8:45 or whatever time it is. Although, but okay, so here's the other thing real quick. If JJ McCarthy is off the board, do you think the Vikings do not entertain moving down to 4?
I think they will try to move down to 4. And again, let me
Okay.
make this clear. The only way I think the Giants will trade up to 4 is if Drake Maye is the quarterback. I think they want one of these two, McCarthy and Maye, and they
Mhm.
believe one of the two is worth trading up for. It doesn't mean
Okay.
I don't think they take the other one at 6, but I think they'd only trade up for one of those two. I don't know which one that is.
Mm.
My prediction is that's Drake Maye. Again, Joe
Yeah.
Shane went to 6 of those games. He fits a profile similar to what they already worked with Josh Allen, and the upside is there to be an elite quarterback if the things go right for him, in my opinion. So, and I think in their opinion as well, but we'll see. So if that's the case, I think that they want to trade up. But the problem, like, I'm not worried about the Vikings trading up, because I think if you're the Cardinals, you're not willing to go down to 11, because if you go down to 11, now you don't get Malik Nabers or Marvin Harrison,
Right.
right? And if you go down to 6, you might still get Harrison at that point, because the Giants will go quarterback. The Chargers could go Joe Alt, the offensive lineman. It's Jim Harbaugh. He might go. I mean, I still think he'd go Harrison, would be my prediction, but he might go Joe Alt. Or you may have a similar grade on Nabers and Harrison, or you like Nabers enough that you're willing to go to 6 and you still get your guy. But if you go all the way down to 11, you might not even get any of the big 3 receivers, and now you're in a position where you picked up a lot of assets from the Vikings. You got their 11, their 23, next year's first, and probably more. But do you really want to do that at that point as the Cardinals? They did that last year. They traded back with the Texans and they picked up a bunch of assets to move out of that spot. And now they really look like a team that, to me, wants to give Kyler Murray a number 1 wide receiver. And so I
Mhm.
still think that's their number 1 goal in this draft. So I think the Giants are in a great position if the quarterback they want is available at 4.
Yeah. Do you see any scenario where the Chargers take JJ McCarthy at 5 and trade Justin Herbert? Because I feel like they might be in a little bit of a rebuild. I don't know. I feel like it also sounds kind of crazy, but Jim Harbaugh has literally not shut up about how much he loves JJ. So I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know. Could it be an option?
I don't think it's an option. I don't think it's the most impossible thing, because, you would have to think, what was Harbaugh's mindset when he took this job? Harbaugh has been
Mm.
highly coveted by the NFL for years, and he stayed at Michigan, and he has not left Michigan. He finally decided to leave. To me, the reason he decided to leave is because a team opened up with an elite young quarterback prospect like
Mm.
Justin Herbert. So I think he went there for Herbert. So I don't think he's going to trade Herbert.
Okay. Would be interesting.
Yeah, it would change everything. And I would hope in that
Yeah.
case that Joe Shane picks up the phone fast to get Justin Herbert on this team.
Oh my God. Could you imagine?
It'd be fun. Brian Dable,
Yeah.
especially with that type of physical talent, would be really interesting to watch. Jalen
Yeah.
Hyatt immediately would have a
Oh my
really good
God.
chance to break out.
Yeah. I think we would, automatically see this team upgrade. And I think Herbert is one of those players that he would be able to get around a mediocre offensive line, which we obviously have seen Daniel Jones not be able to do that. So
Yeah, his first season in LA, they had, I believe, like the 30th ranked one of the bottom 5 offensive lines his first year in LA, and he had a good
wow.
stats. Still didn't win a lot of games. That's the one knock with Herbert. He hasn't won yet at the NFL level, but I think
Mhm.
it'd be a lot easier for him to win if he gets out of the conference with Joe Burrow, Patrick
Right.
Mahomes, CJ Stroud, Lamar Jackson. He goes over the conference with, like, what over here in the NFC? Not that much.
Yeah. Listen, if he came to the NFC East, he'd probably automatically be the best.
I think he would be. Yeah.
Yeah. Would be interesting. But I kept you a little bit long, so thank you so much. It was great to have you on. You guys can follow Dan on Twitter and make sure you follow Big Blue Banter. They do episodes every single day. What do you guys have coming up the next couple of days before the draft?
So next couple of days before the draft, we have our My Guys episode, which is just an episode breaking down all our favorite values and targets for the Giants, guys from day 3, day 2, day 1. We're also going to do a live show coming up either
Okay.
Tuesday or Wednesday night, where we're going to have questions from listeners and just kind of a feel for like where we're at with 24 to 48 hours ago. And then finally, when the draft comes, we're going to have recap live show night of the first draft. We're going to have Friday show, Saturday show, Sunday show. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited for it. And thank you for having me on. This was a lot of fun. Like, this was a great conversation, as I knew it would be. And I had a great time. So I didn't even really notice the time going by. I was having such a good time. So it was good to finally do this.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Maybe we'll do it again when the draft is all over and we can see if we were right, how things went.
Yeah, we'll see. It's hard to get these things right, but you never know.
I know. It's definitely going to be entertaining. That's for sure.
Yep.
All right. Thanks.